I'm Leon, and today I want to talk about the Air Warriors Blitz 6, a pretty simple 6-shooter that nobody's talking about. That might be for good reason, though. Let's take a look. The Air Warriors Blitz 6 is found in your local Dollar General, this one being at a pretty good price range of the $8 mark. First of all, I can definitely get down with that price point. It's getting increasingly hard to find cheap Nerf blasters. But another thing I've definitely noticed is one, nobody's covered this thing, like ever. Like nobody's even talked about it, and I don't think people knew it was coming out, like the Easy Shot. Which is particularly weird. Not for any unknown reason to me. It's another 6-shooter, which I'll talk about the one that's kind of overshadowed this thing. But there's quite a bit to like here. So enjoy this review, which is also going to be a first look for many of you. And I promise I'll be nicer to this thing than you think. The Air Warriors Blitz 6 is a pullback 6-shot revolver from, well, Air Warriors. That's all. This looks like it moves, it doesn't. This is the priming handle, this is the trigger down here. Notably, no trigger guard, which I think is a little odd. This kind of counts up here. And then your little cylinder, which does rotate on prime. That's as simple as it gets. It's a 6-shooter, which, hey, go figure, right? Honestly, though, not much else to talk about. I will definitely mention paint on this side and this side. So Air Warriors is taking the sort of X-Shot Skins approach where they don't paint the top of the blaster but do paint the sides. And I think the paint job is pretty cool. It definitely screams weirdly like Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger kind of thing. This whole gun screams, well, Space Blaster to me, in a good and a bad way. I'll go ahead and talk about the grip real quick. This grip is remarkably tough to get down with. For smaller Nerfers, it's really tough, especially because the prime weight is a little heavier on this one than you would expect, because this one shoots pretty well. So the grip really matters, and I find it a little tough for more inexperienced Nerfers who don't have their finger completely off the trigger here. So they'll end up kind of half priming it. And the prime weight is really heavy, which means that the priming handle comfort does matter, and it's not super comfortable. I actually wouldn't want to use this one as a primary because, well, the priming handle feels very thin but stiff and rigid, but not in like a good way, in like a kind of uncomfortable way. To load, all you really have to do is just front load like this, and then you're fully loaded. I do want you to notice how far these darts do stick out, because that is going to be relevant, especially for those who are looking for a pistol. I'll touch on that issue a little bit later, but once you're loaded, you prime, then you can fire. And it actually fires pretty well. It's surprising. It's a little, really potent kind of package, and I think it shoots a little harder than a stock Reflex 6, which, honestly, pretty cool. But speaking of shooting, let's go ahead and see it fire. Starting out with a full cylinder of the Air Warriors Accublast, then kind of just moving to whatever. It's very hard to dislike this thing, definitely. But it's also very hard to feel, well, it's very hard to like this thing. There is a lot of good that it does, and a lot of, features that it happens to have. First is the addition of no iron sights, which I think is a cardinal sin in this case. You should not have a blaster with no iron sights on it. That just makes it really hard to aim. You can certainly get away with using the back post as like a reference, but there's not an easy way to aim this one, and that's a little tough, I won't lie. And apart from my sort of comfort complaints with the grip and the priming handle, which aren't like a deal breaker by any means, I certainly wouldn't be afraid of this one. My main concern actually comes from the cylinder. I don't like cylinders where the darts stick out, because then you can't do what most Nerfers who are going to be buying one of these want to do, and that's put it in a pocket. Because if I put it in a pocket, then I'll put pressure on these darts and bend them and mangle them, and they won't look super good. That isn't a good thing. Now, none of this is really a deal breaker. This is an $8 blaster, but there is a pistol that's currently being released that I think overshadows this thing quite a lot. And you've heard everybody talk about it. It's the Desperado. The Desperado does a lot of things right at a smaller size. Its comfort feels a lot better to the Blitz 6. Its capacity is the exact same, and its power output, while a little less, also still lets you use it one-handed. The Blitz 6 requires two hands to prime and fire. And while the power output of the Blitz 6 is still nothing to really sneeze at, it's tough to recommend a sort of generic pullback 6-shooter when both the Reflex 6 exists and the Desperado is now out. And sure, the Desperado has its power issues, but do I really want to take power over comfort in the case of a sidearm, where primarily if I'm using a sidearm, I want to go like that compared to, yeah, I can fire my first shot just fine, but I have to have two hands, which means I might have to have a sling, or my blaster needs to be like here, and then I need to... It certainly works, but here's kind of the reason I bring the Desperado up. This isn't even a dollar difference between the two. This is $8 flat, and this is $8.88, like $8.88. And that extra 88 cents, I think, gets you a lot. Darts are covered, one-handed usability, iron sights, small footprint so it can go in a pocket and come out, compared to no iron sights, so a little hard to aim, a little oversized and chunky, but more power. So it could be a toss-up between what you want. But another comparison does come to mind, which is $8 for this, or $10 for whatever Nerf is offering, and that includes the Disruptor and the Strong Arm. So is the $2 extra worth getting a Nerf brand blaster? Is the 88 cents more worth getting the Desperado over the Blitz 6? In my opinion, yes. But if you don't want to spend that money, or if you really like the look of the Blitz 6, then there's nothing wrong with purchasing one. In fact, I'd encourage you to. I think it shoots decently hard, and comfort reasons aside, it's fun. It's a 6-shooter, and it will get the job done. It's just not the best one out in the market right now. But that's okay. That's perfectly fine. The blaster doesn't need to be the best to be good. And the Blitz 6, I think, is a good comparison. If you like what I do around here, feel free to like and subscribe. And leave a comment first if you've even seen this thing. Like, I'm curious if you guys knew about this prior to seeing this review. And let me know if you think I'm being too harsh on it by saying the Desperado is better. Go get the Desperado. Would you pay $8 for the Blitz 6? Will you pay $8 for the Blitz 6? Let me know. I'm curious what your take on this blaster is, because there's not a lot to love here, but there's not a lot to hate here. It's honestly pretty simple. And as always, you don't have to buy it just because a reviewer told you to. Spend your money how you want to. Desperado versus Blitz 6. You don't want the Desperado? Don't have to get the Desperado. If you want the Blitz 6, get the Blitz 6. But that's completely up to you. That is your decision at the end of the day. And as always, take it easy.